And we are live. The broadcast has started. Welcome to the first University of Windsor Free Speech Association live stream. We are here to talk about climate change, hopefully, but we don't really have a lot prepared, so we might just move the discussion into some other direction anyway. With me today are Dallas Gibb, George Basha, and Xin Xia. I'm not really. I don't want to mispronounce, but hopefully that's good enough.
No, you didn't. You got it right.
Great. Yeah. So say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Well, how are we going to start? Do you have any thoughts about climate change?
Well, is everyone maybe I don't know. Like, I think everyone has maybe a different opinion on it. I think to even have the conversation, do we all agree maybe on say some common points? Like maybe does everyone believe that the climate is changing at least, or do people you know what I mean? Like, we can go from there, whether or not it's man-made or it's just naturally occurring. Okay,
I'll take over then. Oh, by the way, I should have introduced myself. I forgot.
It's okay.
I'm Francis Litwin. I'm also a member of the association. Right. Well, for me, climate change, I believe that there isn't a time in history where there hasn't been a climate change. You know, it's always the Earth is a complex system, and it's constantly changing. Right. We have ice ages every 10 or so thousand years. Right. That also counts as climate change. But what interests us the most is whether, of course, human-caused climate change is a thing. For me, I believe that it is happening. Humans are affecting climate change. I don't think it's as bad as people are saying, but I don't think it's a matter of no concern either.
I'm with you there. I think it's exaggerated at the least, man-made climate change. I mean, exaggerated.
I think I would have to agree on that one. The only problem, I think, is that while I think it does merit some concern in terms of scientific study, I don't think that we've come to any conclusion about human activity on it. So I don't know if that's something we should concern ourselves with until we're more sure about that kind of thing. But I mean, like you said, there's been climate changing throughout all of recorded history, and we know that. I mean, even in Europe in the 1500s, they reported or colloquial reports say that it was much hotter than it is now. So I mean, it's undoubted that it's changing. It's just if it was hotter then I mean, obviously there was no heavy industry in the 1500s.
I would say that honestly, I don't think we really have much effect at all on the climate. I know I'm probably maybe a black sheep on this, but when you look at statistics and how much, the issue with it is that they say the amount of carbon that we're producing is causing this climate change. But when we look at how much carbon the human population produces, we produce very, very little in the grand scheme of things. So nature in itself produces, on a conservative estimate, about 97% of all carbon that's in the atmosphere. And
yeah, I've heard that figured as well.
The whole human population produces around the 3%, and that's high. 3% is even a big number. Some say it can go lower down to around 2.5 or so. So I don't see it as really us contributing that much. Is it changing? Yes, but a lot of the things you have to understand is that, from what I've seen, is that a lot of things are politicized, and even within the UN, the scientific community, they actually had a bit of a. There was a little bit of what is it? They had an email situation where some emails got leaked, and none of the scientists were in agreement on what if we were actually really influencing the climate. I think it's just more of a thing to be able to tax people on a lot of carbon. I don't know. I guess this kind of goes into the conspiracy aspect of it, but I feel like once you can get a carbon tax on things, everything can be carbon taxed because everything that you do has a carbon footprint. So honestly, I really don't think we're doing anything to the environment. So that's my opinion.
Can we go back to that number you gave just for a second, George? What?
I also had a question there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go first if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's a short answer.
Yeah.
When you say 3%, do you mean that it's just humans, as in what we breathe out, or do you mean all our machines and all our livestock? Is that included in that?
So I got this number actually from a class I took, and one of the chapters was environmentalism, and if I remember correctly, it was just in general through industry. I don't believe it. You know what? That's actually a good thing. I don't know if it also included livestock, but it did include all the industry. And the thing is, a lot of these environmental policies have nothing to do with, say, livestock like cows and such like that. It's there to curb industry, right? So that number, I guess, includes the industrial world, really. Cars, carbon emissions from cars, from factories, from manufacturing. That's what I believe. I can look it up, actually, find out exactly if it does include livestock, but I can't give you a 100% answer on that.
Okay, please do. I think it's an important point there. I don't know what the exact proportions are, but I do know that methane from cows is a big thing. At least I hear, right? What was your question, Dallas?
I just wanted to ask you, do you know if that figure, how that figure's changed over time? Like, say, since the last, 100 years?
No, actually. I'm sorry. This is actually, I didn't even know we were talking about the environment, or I would have brushed up on some of this.
Just to clarify, we're all very unprepared. This was the spur of the moment thing. So,
yeah. I believe the statistics were from 2012.
Okay.
But if it's 3%, I think it's actually, if I remember correctly, it's, you know what? No, I can't even comment on that. I don't want to be irresponsible here and just throw out numbers.
I mean, even if it did climb, say, from 1.5% in 1900 to 3% now, I mean, when does that start moving the needle? Like, at what point does it become a concern, right? Like, if 3% is so little, like, is 10% like the cutoff when we need to start realizing that it's us, or like, where do you see that?
You know what? Even if it's 1% that has the possibility of changing the climate, then 1% could be the cutoff, right? But I don't think we have a definitive answer with how much carbon emissions from us really affects the environment, right? So if there's hard data that proves that, let's say, simply at the 3% level is enough to change weather patterns and such, then I would say, you know what, 3% is high enough that we should limit it. We should go below that, right? So, but there's really no solid numbers that I've seen that tell us what determines climate change.
So, like, there's no set percentage of the world's carbon at which we can definitively say that humans are the cause for it, kind of a thing, is what you're getting at. But if we did know the percentage, then anything above that percentage would be then humans' fault for climate change, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
So basically, you do believe we could potentially have enough power to influence the climate?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times, when it comes to science, at least, things are always changing, right? And that's the purpose of science. And this isn't like a fundamental law where we can say, 100% we are. Until that day comes where we can prove without a doubt that we are, then I'm going to be skeptical about it.
Right. No, and that's a natural position to assume, right? You shouldn't trust blindly in everything, even scientists. Everything can be colored. Governments pay for studies. Companies pay for studies. We know this with the tobacco industry, right? How it was all those problems just 2 decades ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just doing a little bit of reading right now just to brush up on that, where I got those numbers from. See, like see, what I'm getting right here too is about 40% of the CO2 that we actually put out there in the environment, 40% of it's being absorbed naturally through whether it's through vegetation and such.
So again, is that the 40% like total industry, livestock, breathing, et cetera, or just human biology?
It says due to human activity.
Okay,
It doesn't
so
really
then
specify that, but
okay,
it could
so we should take
could
that as
incorporate that.
industry. We should take that as the sum of it, then I guess.
Yeah, well, we are responsible for livestock too, right? Farms and stuff, and cattle. Like that is due to us. That's not natural. So, I would assume. I don't know. We can make it. It's not that clear. I don't have the full academic or the abstract here. It's just here. One moment. Where am I getting this study from?
It seems to me that not being clear is kind of a plague on this entire subject and has been for the last little bit.
Oh, it is. And a lot of times when you look in the scientific community, usually what's held by popular belief, one scientist is able to disprove all of that. And so, yeah, until there's, like, if you think about it, we considered Pluto as a planet for the longest time. And then just as of a couple of years now, it's not considered a planet anymore. So things are always changing.
Here, I think there's a particular thing here. Pluto. It's not like Pluto has just dramatically changed in that period of time. What happened was the definition was changed. So I don't think it's the best comparison, but I get what you mean.
Yeah, but then again, it could. Yeah, that's true. We could also look at, for instance, gender well, you know what? Let's not get off topic. But gender dysphoria, right? Under I think it was a DSM-4. It was considered a mental illness, and according to some, for political reasons, they've taken that out of. It's no more considered a mental disorder, right? Due to, I guess, changing political environments and such. So, a lot of it, I would say, like Al Gore. We have to look at really what brought the world's attention to a lot when it comes to carbon emissions, and it was Al Gore, and see who he's connected with and such too. So, I think just scratching at it from a surface level. Kind of would paint a certain image, but I think to really determine how much influence that CO2 emissions do play, we really need to, I guess, wait it out and see what happens. Because the thing is, a lot of these climate scientists, almost every single model they've predicted has been false. I think it was back in the 60s they actually predicted that the world was actually the temperature was declining, it was getting colder. And then that model was proven wrong. So a lot of these models that the scientists that work with the UN put out have been proven to be wrong. So I don't even think we can even go on their predictions because their predictions haven't been accurate.
Going back to what you were saying, you said that in the 70s they were predicting that the world would get cooler, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few years back, climate change, it was called global warming because they predicted the opposite, that it'd get warmer, but so they had to rename it just to keep their narrative.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know. In a way, to be honest with you, there's nothing really more I can add, because honestly, anything else I say, I don't want anyone watching this take my stuff out of context and be like, oh, this is he's stating this as fact. Again, I don't think any of us really brushed up on this. So
no, I think it would be irresponsible if people were to try to take your words and misconstrue them. At this point, it'd be false, I think.
Okay, so talking about speech, then, at what point are people allowed to assert facts in this under the guise of, say, science, or people allowed to talk about the contrary and the skepticism under the guise of free speech? Like, where does that debate fall into it, right? I mean, like you see a lot in media, how it's constantly the it's happening at an alarming rate. You look at An Inconvenient Truth, An Inconvenient Sequel, and it seems to only to paint one side, and skeptics, they seem to be brushed off, and their right to free speech and scientific inquiry seems to be brushed off in order to fit the narrative. So where do you guys stand on that part of it? Do you think there's a threat to free speech in the form of, let's say, climate change narrative being overarching, or are skeptics just as free to talk about their opinions and their scientific data as, say, the people that toe the party line, so to speak? Since it seems we're all kind of in agreement on skepticism here, at least to some degree.
There are two things to parse here, I think. So for one, you're talking about live interviews, for example, between two scientists, one who's a denier, one who's a pro climate change, let's say. I know that's not the right terms. And a lot of TV stations, for example, they just refuse to give a voice to the skeptics. And they say, oh, well, there's a consensus. Almost nobody thinks this. It's all generally agreed that this is not the case. And then the other thing is whether they actually have the ability to express themselves at all, whether the governments are shutting them down or those kinds of things. And I think the answers to those two situations is yes. Like mainstream media is less likely to cover any kind of skepticism, but it's not like these scientists don't have a place to express themselves. You know, you have the internet, you have everywhere. Oh, you have everywhere. That was terrible there. But you get my point here, right? It's. I don't think free speech is under attack here because there isn't some sort of institution that is shutting them down, right? It's not like they're telling them, no, you're not allowed to speak. They're just privately telling them. It's just like any private company can. We choose not to host you here.
But does that not inhibit the ability for people to critically analyze the data that they're presenting, right? If all of the major news networks are refusing to cover this, right, does that not implant into, say, the general public that, hey, maybe we should listen to these media companies rather than listening to the scientists, because they clearly have a leg up on us, knowing that, you know, they're not even going to let these people speak here. Like, does that, I mean, not even necessarily an attack on you know, like the institution of free speech, but the institution of say, equal speech, I guess, in the sense that if you can provide solid evidence, and you should be given a platform to at least display that, because there's a lot of skepticism around the internet and believing what people write on the internet, right? Like, if you host a blog, I mean, you could be a PhD in, say, climate science, for example, and you say, you know, here's all my data, here's my research, and people will go, well, no, it's just some crackpot in a blog. But if they watch CNN and they see, you know, Bill Nye talking there, and Bill Nye's talking about, or Al Gore is talking about, you know, how detrimental it is, even if their facts are wrong, I mean, it's taken as being trusted more. So do these companies have some sort of duty, in a sense, to portray both sides on a sort of equal playing field? I guess that's a question for everyone, really.
Well, I could see where you're coming from. I'm going to answer the part where it comes to about freedom of speech. Pretty much, a lot of times what they use is they'll right away, if you don't agree with the popular consensus, you're stigmatized as a climate denier. And by just right away them calling you a climate denier, or climate change denier, it's kind of just, you know, it ruins your credibility, at least in the mainstream media. Now, I've seen Tucker Carlson. He's argued with Bill Nye on Fox. And I guess really it's only on Fox that you can see, I guess, an opposing opinion to the general consensus. But a lot of times what I realize from the left is they like to use buzzwords and like label people that don't agree with them with certain catchphrases, whether or not you agree with it. So they'll call you, say, an Islamophobe or that. And the same thing I feel like is with the environment. If you don't agree with the popular consensus, you're just labeled as a climate denier, and by doing that, a lot of the mainstream media will discredit you for it. So at least
that's how Well, that's how the left argues, with buzzwords.
Well, yeah,
Hmm.
that's an
Well-
easy way to shut people down. But
I see what you mean here. For me, though, I've never, whenever I've expressed any doubt about climate change, I've never been encountered on a public level with any kind of, heckling or any kind of, I don't know, any kind of opposition. So I think that all of this, it only happens in the media sphere. Not
Like among professional like climate scientists is what you're saying, like among like professional people, like the average layperson is not going to be
Like,
chastised for their views. Is that what you're getting at?
I have never run into that kind of situation. I don't know if it happens to everybody, but to me, it seems like this is just a media sphere issue. It's people in the media are being discredited, and professionally, of course, it's not great, but it's not like they're shut down. It's not like people can't hear them out. And if they can defend their position, then I don't think people just dismiss them out of hand. At least people just the general public watching them.
you know what? Actually, this would be, I think, a good segue to go into. Like, let's look at, for instance, Ben Shapiro. Now, anyone that's honestly watched any of Ben Shapiro's videos would see that he argues through facts. He's a very reasonable person and just doesn't throw out, statistics without backing it up. But Ben Shapiro is labeled by many as a white supremacist. And a lot of that language and rhetoric is used so that you don't look at what he's saying. Anything he says, you're like, you know what, he's a white supremacist. I'm not going to take that seriously. And the problem is that even, let's just say hypothetically he was a white supremacist, it doesn't change the premise. It doesn't change the facts and what he's saying. So, yes, people are open, just like Ben. He has his own platform and he goes to universities and speaks. But when you have the left that mostly controls most of the media that the population consumes, and you begin labeling people as a white supremacist or a climate denier, people then kind of say, you know what, they either decide, brush off everything you say because they're like, he's just a climate denier. He's saying some stuff. And that's the problem with, I think, a lot of people, is that they can't really think for themselves and they rely on the media to tell them what to think. So whether or not someone is speaking facts, if the media is able to paint a picture of someone in a negative way, in a way, it kind of negates what they're saying, because the sad thing is the majority of people really don't think for themselves, and a lot of it is just they're not taught to critically think, and that's the beautiful thing about university, is that when you go to university, you're supposed to be critical. You're supposed to be open to a bunch of different ideas. But what's happened now on university campuses is that, you just have one narrative and that's pushed. And if you go against it, even if you can back it up with facts, and I've experienced this in many of my classes, you're just right away, an easy way for them to disprove anything you say is just like, okay, well, this guy's a bigot, he's a climate denier and such, without actually having any burden to prove you wrong. So yes and no. I would say, yeah, of course you can go out there and dispute climate change, but the problem is you have a media that's really biased to a certain narrative, and the second they paint you as a climate denier, a lot of people won't take you seriously, and in a way that kind of hinders your freedom of speech, because now it's not taken as seriously.
Let's see. I agree with you in the sense that a lot of people behave almost like sheep, where they just believe what they're told, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, though, I would agree that this would be a huge problem if there wasn't new media, if there wasn't the internet. Right now, you could see the general population is being more and more entrenched in the internet. You have access to any kind of viewpoints on the internet, and I guess I'm a bit more optimistic as to the general public's ability to think critically, as you mentioned. I think it's turning for the better, and I think that they're seeing through a lot of this agenda pushing, at least more and more.
I would agree with you on that. There was actually a study I just read that Generation Z is a lot more, I would say, I guess, goes again.
I'm sorry. Zed, we're Canadian here.
I used to go to an American school, so I used to go to Wayne State, actually, so I may have picked up on that. But they're a lot more conservative than, say, millennials are. And a lot of them are a lot more skeptical about a lot of things. And the reason being is what you stated above, is that they now have access to the internet. Well, we did before, but there wasn't that, you know, they didn't have so many sources to go to. A lot of people now have their own media outlets, and they can get out there and they can get their message out there. So, yeah, I think in the future things may change. But the problem is right now, the people that are influencing policy that are out there, people who are voting, it's not really our age group, right? The majority of people that vote wouldn't fall into that category, I would say. And when you vote, you're putting your vote to change policy, to push a certain agenda forward, right? So I would say we'd have to wait and see and how that goes. I do have hope. I do think that things are going to change. But we'll see, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you here. We actually have two people joining us right now. Please welcome Khaled Alrayes, our association president.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Unmute yourself. I think you're muted.
Yeah,
there you go. Now when you muted.
Okay, good. And we also have our social media manager, Maggie McCauley.
Who's also muted.
There we go. She's now in the broadcast. Unmute yourself. There you go. Hello. Yeah, sorry, I'm still getting the hang of all these controls, but I'm getting better at it.
Yo, sorry to interrupt, but you know what you sound like, Francis? You sound like, what's his name? If you're listening to NPR.
I do listen to one or two podcasts from NPR.
There's a guy on there, you sound just like him right now, but go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I haven't heard him.
His name, I'll send you a link and you could tell me. But
all right. Well, welcome. We were kind of about to leave off of the topic of climate change, but if you have thoughts to share about climate change, feel free to share.
The one thing that I'd say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
One thing I'd say is that, George, it isn't a violation of your free speech rights to not be taken seriously.
oh no, I agree.
Yeah, but you're saying that, our free speech is being violated because people don't take climate change skeptics seriously.
No, I didn't mean it. No, I didn't mean it. It's violated. My free speech is violated. I just mean that it makes. Okay, let me rephrase that. So what I was talking about. So earlier, one of the questions that Dallas was saying was that. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just gonna reiterate it. Basically, he was saying that if you believe that we don't really contribute that much to climate change, that your voice is not taken seriously. So in a way, you're kind of censored in a way that because the media does hold a certain amount of power in political opinion. So yeah, you're not silenced, but this gets very complicated. I don't believe my free speech is violated, but I feel like it's limited in a way when you have some like mainstream media delegitimizing you.
I think we need to draw a difference between. Oh, sorry, Khaled.
Oh no, you go ahead. I'll go right after you.
Between.
Oh, and one more thing before you comment. I'm not saying that there should be any rules or government should step in to tell the media you can't do that. I'm completely against that. I'm just saying that's what has happened. I'm not for any regulations in regulating that or anything like that. So.
All right. I just think we need to make a distinction between an organization like CBC and one like CNN, where
fake news.
Fake news. But something like CBC is government funded, and that
Who
means
even
that
watches CBC?
Pardon?
He's over the age of
Who
50.
even watches CBC?
It's kind of true. I mean, I don't even own a TV. I haven't watched general TV in years.
I watch CBC every now and again.
1 second, I'm muting myself.
Yeah, I think that's mainly the case generally with any really televised news broadcast. You see, generally speaking, the main audience are, generally speaking, Gen X or older. So most millennials really don't even watch the CBC, CNN, whatever you're talking about.
Well, yeah. let me re-ask the question. The question was along the lines of if so the media and the general public seems to toe kind of the line of climate change being a force to be reckoned with, along the lines of like Al Gore and Bill Nye and people like that. Does the media giving them a larger platform and a more glorified platform than they do to say climate skeptics, does that sway the population in a sense that it kind of curbs the ability for people to speak on those platforms in a sense that is quote unquote unbiased, right? Like does the media hold an unnecessary power over these over the debate, right? Does that somehow inhibit free speech or help free speech in whatever way?
Right. Well, to quickly recap, my stance on this is that it's not a problem because we have the internet and we have a greater and greater adoption of the internet in public homes. So eventually they will be exposed to alternative viewpoints anyway.
Well, I'll add to that. I think society in a way discourages free speech because for having certain views you can be fired from your job.
Is climate change one of those views?
You know what? No, I don't think climate change, but in regards to free speech in general, I think if an employer was to go on my Facebook, for instance, I'd be fired right away. But
I mean, there are reasons where this would be valid. I mean, you wouldn't want like a complete communist or a complete Nazi to be on your team, right?
The employee is doing it completely out of the job and completely unrelated to the work itself. I don't think it really should be a factor.
But see, I disagree on that.
Well, I'm just going to add this, then Maggie, you can go on and say how you disagree. But the thing is, I feel like a lot of people hold certain views, and they may agree with a lot of views that say, for instance, that are conservative views, and they might not speak because they're worried about their professional careers. I know some people that actually didn't even want to join our free speech group because they are worried about future employment. Now, yeah, there's no laws in place that in a what's it called? An employer has every right whether or not they want to hire you or not, but it builds a culture that silences people, and I just don't. It's just not. I sound like Justin Trudeau with but yeah, you get what I'm saying though. It's not a healthy environment if you have any opposing views, and it discourages speech. A lot of students actually, and even in the class, are worried if their professor will, look down upon them and grade them harder if they oppose them in the classroom. Now, again, that they do have the free speech; they can say what they want, but there's that environment of fear, and in a way, it hinders free speech.
That is true.
The classroom
that classroom thing that definitely happened to me. I think it probably happened to all of you.
Yeah, it's so relatable. I often find myself, keeping quiet and not challenging my prof even when he's wrong, because I don't want that guy to hold a grudge against me. I don't want him to, give me a lower grade over my views.
A good number of times I don't find myself being the first one speaking out in class exactly because of that reason. Though I do tend to feel more comfortable when I see somebody else talking about it than I could. But generally speaking, it does add that sense of fear.
Right. I mean, I'm in philosophy, so I'm pretty much encouraged to argue with my professors. They offered to write me letters to law school after, but I understand that's definitely a problem in other departments, especially. And that's important to draw a distinction again between the classroom and the workplace. When the Vegas shooting, there was that one lawyer who was just working for some media company. I don't remember which one. Might have been CBS.
Yeah.
And she wrote about how oh, well, they're all right-wing, so they probably voted for Trump, so they deserve this. And I mean, I'd support her getting fired over that. It had nothing to do with her job, nothing to do with acting as a lawyer. But if you can be seen as the face of a company, what the media does to us, then your views are instantly attached to that company.
So is climate change one of those things that if you post, say, skeptically about it on your profile, is that something that's going to come back to you?
This is one area.
Only if you're scientific, I guess. Only if you're, working in the scientific community. Otherwise, then it's probably not that big of a deal.
I'm fairly libertarian on this, and that I think an employer should be able to do whatever the hell they want. Hire someone because they're a communist, then you don't have to hire someone because they're a communist. And I'll
I completely agree. Though I do mainly agree with George that it does kind of create this kind of culture, and I think the response to that is to really change the culture itself rather than legislate and put laws against that.
No, I agree.
Yes, individuals should adapt to the situation, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, no, I agree, right? Like I said, it's kind of like a paradox, right? Like where if you're for free speech, then you're in the belief that that lawyer, for instance, had every right to say, and I believe Maggie agrees that she should. But again, a company has the right to determine who they hire, and if they want to let someone go because it ruins their brand image, now someone with a certain view is going to destroy someone's business, because I'm sure other people would boycott them for that, right? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword when it comes to that. And I don't think there's either a right or wrong answer. It's just a cultural change, I guess. It's just the culture has to change, and that will take time.
And I think that's the nail on the head, is that people should be allowed to say what they want to say about a given subject. I mean, within reason, obviously.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And an employer should be able to let people go as they see fit, right? And to me, I'm seeing more and more, like even in my own personal life, that climate change is getting into the area of discussion where if you say the wrong thing, you can find yourself in sort of hot social water, in the sense where people are, there's as much emotion attached to that as, say, talking about, communists or Nazism and stuff like that, right? Where, somewhat unacceptable things to talk about with the general public.
Okay, just interjecting here quickly. We have another joiner to this call, Christian, who is also a member of the association. You can unmute yourself now.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm good. I thought you had to unmute me.
Wow, you aged.
Yeah, I did. I missed the beginning. What were you guys talking about?
Everything.
Yeah,
we've done a lot of talk on climate change and different discussions on that, and now we're currently moving into the free speech aspect of it and other more controversial views. In where does an employer's rights fall versus your free speech rights? How do they mesh, and what kind of culture does that create?
I'll give you the question that I just asked. It was something along the lines of, where do you see climate change as a topic on the line of politically correct things to talk about, say, or post about on your Facebook if you, say, disagree with the overarching narrative of it?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, trying to get you in on this.
So, climate change, I mean, like, it's happening. I mean, I don't think it should be something that people should be allowed to talk about. I don't think it's definitely something that would hurt somebody's feelings if, like, you started talking about it, or it's something that's taboo. I mean, it's definitely something to be discussed. I'm studying. I have a class right now called Engineering and the Environment, and we deal with a lot of topics on climate change, and we talk about it a lot, and it's definitely real. I can understand maybe why some people think that it's not happening, but I don't think we should be ignoring this.
So
one thing that we clarified at the very beginning is that I think we all believe that there is no such thing as no climate change. The Earth is constantly changing, just over very long periods of time, very slightly, right? What we really are talking about is whether it's man-made and whether there is cause for concern, whether we should intervene.
Oh, it's definitely man-made because we were talking about this in class. That as carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere, so does the temperature. But there's like a lag by about 800 years. So, I mean, the temperature has been increasing over like hundreds of thousands of years. But as of recently, due to like the Industrial Revolution and all this consistent rapid change that we've been undergoing, especially in the last 10, 15 years, it's definitely going to get a lot worse. And I mean, we can't ignore the fact the ice caps are melting.
Okay, but what happened in 1217 then if it is on hold for 800 years? Like, I'm sorry, that sounds like bullshit.
No, it's true. I mean, carbon dioxide is still. I mean, like there wasn't a lot of it back then. There's more of it now, but
Well, let me clarify that as well. Of course, it's a closed system, right? It's not like the carbon dioxide appeared out of nowhere. It's just that more of it is present in the air, and in the water. So the greenhouse gas effect, right? It's sun rays are being reflected back onto the Earth instead of going back into space.
Yeah, you said wasn't
hang on.
like on hold like 800 years off.
Never
So it's the
mind.
Industrial Revolution we're seeing the results of. But 800 years ago is.
Where's my notes? Hang on, I have it right here.
Sorry, Xin, go ahead.
Oh, Christian, you mentioned something about the polar ices or something.
Sorry, what?
think I read.
The ice caps, I believe.
Oh, the ice caps, yeah.
Yeah, the ice caps. Yeah, you mentioned something about the ice caps. Now, I read something a while back. Emphasis on a while back. That we're getting more polar ice than ever. So, what do you make out of that? Assuming that I remembered it correctly.
Right. I heard of this too. Like
the ice, like it's coming back. Like it's no longer melting, and it's forming.
No, what I heard is that there are certain regions of the polar ice caps that are melting at an unprecedented rate, whereas other regions are actually growing, and growing even faster. It's just a thing that I've heard float around. I'm not. I don't know if this is true or not.
I've never heard that either. Let me see. I'm looking for my notes on climate change right now. I'll send you the slide.
Just to reiterate, this was a very spur of the moment kind of thing, so we're not all prepared for this discussion. Just to make that clear.
Yeah, and I don't think the point of this was we were going into the whole science of it. It was more, I think, at least it was moving more towards the whole how the debate around it affects our personal lives and how opinions on it can affect the way that we're perceived within society, the media, face-to-face conversations, things like that.
How can I have a slide here? How can I send it to the chat? Should I put it in Discord or?
What you could do is screen share it, and
share.
I could put you in the forefront.
Yeah.
That one.
Okay, there we go. You're now focused on. So even if somebody else speaks, what you're showing is still going to be showed.
Okay, yeah, this one right here.
So what are we talking about here exactly?
It was just the 800-year lag after like the increase of carbon dioxide.
The only issue I have with that chart, now it could be right, but I see it comes from the Inconvenient Truth. Now, where are they getting that from?
I don't know. This is what my prof gave us.
Yeah, see, like, I don't know. It's questionable just because it's coming from Al Gore, and it's kind of...
Yeah.
I
And
wouldn't
like
say...
explain to me what happened 800 years ago, because, like, it was the Dark Ages, and, like, it wasn't actually dark, but it was by no means the Industrial Revolution.
It's not saying that like 800 years ago something happened and like all of a sudden we're feeling it now. It's just like over a prolonged period of time, carbon dioxide is being released into the atmosphere, and then we don't feel it until 800 years later.
Actually, I know why 800 years ago, Maggie, there was that increase. It was because of the Crusades. The Crusaders going over to Jerusalem caused that.
No, but I feel like there's a point to be made about the 800 years, right? I mean, if it takes 800 years to catch up, then how can we describe what's going on right now as Industrial Revolution when the Industrial Revolution was 150 years ago?
They can't even predict the weather next week.
Okay, that is not a fair comparison, George.
No, but I mean,
no, but that's another thing though.
Weather is based on trend.
Local weather is a bit different than a global trend.
Oh, here it is. Here's your explanation. Temperature based on trapped water or snow, but CO2 continues to change the atmosphere. CO2 change lags behind the temperature change by 800 years. Does this fit the theory explanation? Temperature is based on trapped water, but carbon dioxide continues to change in the atmosphere.
You know what? I think the smartest thing is maybe we'll just leave it at that and move to the next topic, and then maybe next week we can pick up on that if we want to do some research.
Yeah, or even on Thursday.
Or whatever. Yeah. You guys have any?
I could ask my prof about it.
Yeah, be like, my friends think this is bullshit because it sounds like bullshit and the only source is an inconvenient truth.
Those exact words?
Exact words.
That's what I talked to my prof.
Well, that's a bit strong there, but sure, fair enough. So I think I agree. I think it's about time that we start moving the conversation toward free speech, right? This is what the group is all about. We briefly talked about this earlier before Khaled, Maggie, and Christian joined. Is that our viewpoints being affected by is the free speech of the skeptical viewpoint on climate change is it at risk right now? And
I think what Xin said
Maggie.
Yeah, I think what Xin said is true. Like, it depends on what community you're in. I'd say in areas like scientific areas or even philosophy, people tend to buy into this a bit more.
What my stance was that in the general public, this isn't an issue, right? Because it's not like you can't find information on the skeptical viewpoint, and it's not like people are being. It's not a taboo subject. People can defend their skeptical viewpoints, no problem, in the general public. Of course, in the media, in the various industries, I'm sure it's a bit different.
Generally speaking, I see the worst that's been happening to climate change skeptics is mainly they're just being mocked, and sure, that does have an effect, but that's ultimately not silencing them or hindering the free speech in any way.
Well, but does it? I feel like it kind of does though at the same time, because if you're constantly being berated for your opinion on something, I mean, we all talked about how in our classes we often find it hard to speak about our own political views in certain contexts, right? So if you're being berated about your views or your science on climate change, are you just gonna stop talking about it? Like, I mean, it's obviously not somebody forcefully inhibiting you. It's kind of like by proxy almost. Like
depends how passionate you are behind about it.
Well, I don't even think getting berated about it is an issue. I think it's just the other side stigmatizing you and making you seem like a a pariah. Like, again,
I guess that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was getting at.
That's a side effect of the overall atmosphere going on right now. I think, again, it's a matter of changing the overall atmosphere and changing how people really interact with each other and making people in general more open to all their viewpoints, whether they're skeptical or not, because I think what's going on right now is that because the general media outlook is, okay, let's shun whoever disagrees with us, that's what will eventually follow.
Well, yeah, listen, like, for instance, I don't know, like, any view you have, like, let's just say you don't agree with transgenderism, or you're labeled as a transphobe, and that does have effects that really affects you in your social setting, and people won't really take you seriously for that. So it's not just, oh, I think your opinion is wrong, this is why. It's, don't listen to this guy, he's a hateful bigot, and anything that comes out of his mouth is fake. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Fake
the
news.
issue.
That's how they think, though. That's how they all think. That's how these postmodernists think.
On the other hand, though, there is a certain limit where there are certain views, you know, at some point we should be discarding them, right? And we don't treat the flat earthers with the same legitimacy as everyone else, for example. And I think that's all right.
Yes,
I think the difference here, though, is that I think that science has concluded that the Earth is not flat, right? I mean, science has not concluded that human activity is the main cause for climate change, right? I mean, if there was definitive science and you just denied the actual science, which is what they claim that, you know, skeptics do, is they just deny the science, but the science is still out on it. I mean, I feel like drawing that comparison is kind of faulty, right? I mean,
well, not even that. I'll give you an example, actually, about a flat earther. I have a friend who kind of subscribes to that belief that the Earth is flat. And instead of me going, you know what, you're crazy, I don't even want to have any dialogue with you, I said, you know what, find me the best evidence you have in believing why the Earth is flat. And we sat down, and every single point, I found him counter evidence. And by the end of that conversation, he was now skeptical about his own beliefs. So, yeah, you know what? You can grab someone who's a Nazi, and they might believe horrible things. But by denying him and not allowing him to even talk and saying we shouldn't even hear him out, kind of prohibit countering any of his arguments. And instead, he'll go preach to the ignorant, and that movement will grow. So, in a way, I think it's counteractive by doing that. So listen, if you don't believe that humans are creating climate change, then you know what? Then I want someone to talk to me and prove to me why I should believe otherwise. But by saying, you know what, don't even give George a platform or don't even listen to him, I'm going to continue believing into something that might be wrong. And I'm going to spread that to other people, and then they're going to believe it too. So,
no, absolutely. But when you're talking about giving somebody a platform, you have to keep in mind that you're also denying somebody else a platform, right? We have limited numbers of platforms.
Well, but I mean, like,
That's necessarily true, though.
I mean, given the way the internet works, is that there is potentially hypothetically potentially unlimited amount of platforms. I mean,
oh right, of course. I was talking about mainstream media here.
Yeah, but the media really deals with more where the demand goes. You know, where the demand lies. You know, mainly what people want to listen to, and compared to what may be popular or unpopular.
Well, but I mean, the mainstream media also does afford itself the ability to give an equal platform to people, right? I mean, like, when you watch debates on Fox News or on CNN, right? Usually there's multiple different people that are on talking about it from different viewpoints, right? Like, it's not like it's not doable, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. No, that's true. But let's just look at, for instance, Milo, when he went to go give a speech at Berkeley. They shut down the whole university and destroyed it, and that actually got him more popular, right? And the campus Republicans did book a space for him to speak, and he was denied that. And if anything, it worked against them. So I don't see how, for instance, someone like Milo is taking away from someone else.
Well, I also think another thing that's going on is that when you're essentially silencing someone, or just mainly I would say denying them a platform simply based on the basis of, oh man, he's a Nazi, oh he's a white nationalist, oh all that kind of stuff. I think what happens there is that you do end up giving this person at the end of the day a victim narrative, and people generally fall for those. They do fall for these victim narratives, and they will more.
That's
They
why
will
we have the left.
outside of that person.
Well, yeah.
What's that?
I said that's why we have the left.
Exactly.
But the other issue is that who's the arbiter in determining who gets a platform or not? You see, depending on where the pendulum swings, determines who gets that platform, right? So let's just say all of a sudden, the media and society becomes very right-wing, then they'll start silencing the left, and the left will say, "Oh, what about our free speech?" Just as right now conservatives are saying that are fighting for free speech because the media and everything is controlled by the left. So I think we have to be neutral, and by determining what speech is allowed and not, creates a dangerous precedent.
Right. No, it's like air, right? You don't realize that you need it until you start not having it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good analogy.
It's also Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary and King Henry VIII. That whole debacle.
What?
Sorry, my brother's being weird, but
All right.
but you have King Henry, and he set in certain laws about how to treat those who had a different religion from the monarch. So when he converted by starting his own church, all those who remained Catholic, he persecuted, he rolled up in carpets and lit on fire. So then when his daughter Mary, who was still a Catholic, came and took over the throne, she used the same laws. And she did the same thing to Protestants. So it's when you create something that can persecute those who disagree with you, you don't know who comes up after you, and they can use the exact same thing to hurt you.
Well, that's just like actually a perfect example in the United Kingdom. There was a Jewish student advocacy group, and they wanted to they put in some hate speech laws in which you couldn't criticize Israel. What ended up happening was when they wanted to bring a Jewish speaker on campus, the Palestinian Solidarity Movement used their same laws against them and actually prohibited the Jewish speaker from coming on campus. So yeah, it works both ways.
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, there's at the I don't remember the exact name, but there's a university in Dublin, Ireland, and they are currently impeaching their student union president because in their newsletter.
What?
Go ahead.
I don't know what's going on, but in their newsletter, there had been instructions on like how to get an abortion in Ireland and everything, and she went, "Guys, this is actually illegal. We can't print this, otherwise we risk getting in trouble." And so she had them reprint it all and impeached her.
For doing something, for going by the book?
Yeah, for going by the book.
Okay.
Because the previous student government had broken the law when they published it. So therefore she should have to too.
Yeah. Well.
Right. Well, what's the general consensus then when it comes to free speech and climate change? Do you think there's an issue or not? Let's start. If I don't know if you have the same order as me, it's Christian, Dallas, George, Khaled, and so on.
Oh no, it's a bit different. I'm all the way at the very end.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Then I'll announce then. So we'll start with Christian then.
Do me last. I didn't catch the first bit of the.
Oh sure. Okay. Okay. Dallas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So in terms of your question, I don't think that the climate change debate is really one that's going to make or break the whole case for free speech and what is free speech, what isn't free speech. But I definitely believe that it falls within the rubric of the current debate that's going on. And by that I mean your opinion on that can be used in a sense that would that could negatively impact you professionally and personally. And so it should be taken into account that it does carry, the same weight that a lot of the touchier subjects that were kind of alluded to throughout the conversation have. And I don't think that it should, because it's science, right? It should be purely factual, and it should not have any type of political attachment to it. But the fact that it does suggests that in some way the free speech debate falls into it. And so I think that if we don't figure out where we're going with it soon, we could go down the path, one path, and not be able to go back down to the next one, and start, trying to alternate or change reality to fit the narrative rather than change the narrative to fit reality. And I think that free speech involves the truth. And so without the truth, you can't have, a truly free speech. If people are being forced to tell lies, then that's not free speech. And I think that if climate change continues to ignore, let's say, the lack of science, then I think that it's going to fall into the category of compelled speech, which is definitely not free speech. So I think we need to be really careful with where we're going on this particular topic. And I'll be the first one to admit that climate change was caused solely by humans when the science is, credibly giving that conclusion, right? I mean, I'll admit the truth.
Okay. So hopefully, with a bit less detail. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed a lot of the conversation, and I had some points to interject, but you guys were having such a good discussion, so I kind of tried to throw them all into one big deal onto it. I apologize for the lengthy. I feel like John Locke.
it's all good. It's all good. All right, George.
Really, the only part I see in this that is hindering free speech is when you have government getting involved in science. And the reason why I say that is that...
Like the CBC.
In a way, yeah. Government shouldn't be involved in any of that. So when you have government involved in science, you have a political incentive to drive a certain narrative. So I think when it comes to science, it should be something that's completely separate from any political sphere, and they should be their own sovereign group. So a lot of times they'll say, look at UN as a a lot of people will quote the UN as some sort of gold standard.
If you could do without an example, please.
All right, without an example. Anyways, I just think that when you do have government involved, it does hinder free speech in a way, because a lot of these scientists, when they grab research money, will only get that money by pushing a certain narrative. And so in a way, yeah, it does. I believe that's how free speech is hindered when it comes to in the environment.
Hashtag taxation is theft.
Sorry?
Hashtag taxation is theft.
Oh God. All right. So we have two yeses basically for free speech being under attack when it comes to climate change. Khaled, go ahead.
All right. So basically, I'm gonna say yes and no. As in, no, it's not right now, but it might potentially be in the future, because it really depends on how the social climate and the cultural climate moves on forward. If, say, the authoritarian left, I'm going to call them, if they keep on having things their way moving on forward, then yes, it is going to become an issue. And yes, it is going to be a threat to people's free speech. However, if the pro-free speech side, whether it be right or left, ends up prevailing, which is actually, in my opinion, happening right now, then it'll no longer be an issue. So I'm going to say it's going to depend on what happens within the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Maggie?
So I agree with a lot of what's been said already. I think it's important to draw the distinction between regular companies and government-funded companies. As government-funded companies who are engaging in censorship and not allowing alternative viewpoints on controversial issues, such as climate change. I think that's something that needs to be made aware of and push for a change in that. But overall, I think that the biggest issue that we're facing in terms of free speech and climate change is just the sheer amount of what's what we're looking for? Confirmation bias, where a lot of climate scientists go into climate science because they believe in climate change. And you end up with a lot of reinforcement of ideas because someone who doesn't agree with climate change as is not going to be able to get a job in climate science even if they wanted to study it. So I'd say that's one issue where free speech would be impacted, not by the government, but by employers, and where that would make the overall scientific community worse.
Okay. Xin?
Can I get the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Do you believe that free speech is under attack when it comes to climate change and expressing its skeptical viewpoint?
Oh, well, it's a combination of what Dallas and George said. You know, if you're not working as a climate scientist, then it's not really that much of a problem. Sure, you can be a skeptic, and sure, your friends are going to think you're a nutcase, but other than that, your freedom of speech is not really under attack. But if you're working as a climate scientist of some sort, then it's a different story. And as George said, when you get the government involved, it's...
Good Lord.
Can you hear the phone ringing on my end?
Yeah.
Damn it. Let me...
Yeah, go ahead. I'll ask Christian in the meantime. Christian, what do you think?
I think that the only people who actually really know what's going on are the people studying it. And, I mean, I forget who mentioned the media, but the media does have a huge impact on it. And they can tell us whatever we want, and the majority of the people who watch the media will believe it. I mean, I believe that climate change is definitely an issue. However, I think there's a lot of gray area in the matter of whether what we're being told is the total truth. And so I think the truth is really in the hands of the people studying it. I also kind of agree with Khaled, with what Khaled had said, is that it might and it might not, like we might not see an effect now, but maybe in the future it might be affecting freedom of speech.
Okay. No, very true, very true.
I'm back.
Okay, great. Is that it, Christian, or do you have
that's
anything
it.
else? Okay. Xin, sorry, I don't remember where you are on, but go ahead.
I do. Going back to what I was saying before, as George said, when you get the government involved, it becomes much more complicated if you're a climate scientist and you're skeptical about the main narrative. I hear that a lot of those studies are government funded, and if you want to keep getting that government cash, you gotta, parrot the main narrative.
Dollar bills, yo.
Right. Okay.
All right, Francis, you get the final word. You get the final word on this one.
Yes, I've chosen to maybe close this off basically because I am something of the group's centrist. I could say. I agree here with Khaled for the most part. Right, it's right now. Climate change is not a taboo subject. We can still discuss it freely. There are plenty of outlets to express yourself on it. Yes, the mainstream media isn't great about it, but on the other hand, they do have valid points why they should not offer a platform to certain climate change deniers. So yes, I believe it depends on the general populace, and if right now I don't see an issue when it comes to free speech and skepticism of climate change. Right. So that's it. Hopefully that rounded off the conversation nicely. Since this is the first live stream, I also wanted to maybe go around the room and ask what you thought about the live stream, whether this is a good format. Are we doing well here?
That's cool.
I
don't have a problem with it.
I like it. I don't think I'm looking at the YouTube video right now, and there's only 2 people watching, and I'm one of them.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
the
I'm the other. Oh, what? I see 2 people watching, but I'm on it, so
I'm not including you.
probably.
Well, I honestly think it's a matter of consistency. I do like the format. I do think we should keep doing this. I do think the more we do this, the more we'll get better, and the more viewers we'll get. So I
Yeah.
do think it's a matter of consistency, and I think we should be doing this at least once a week. That's just my personal opinion.
Agreed. Once a week.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Did anybody
That
My
share?
works.
idea would be Sunday nights, because we all seem to be free, and it gives us a chance to talk about the week and the question of the weekend, which this week was climate change, and I think it really lets us kind of tie everything together.
I
Great.
agree. We should do it. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to just add one thing.
Of course you do, George.
No, I just.
And my hat!
Yeah. No, not that. Anyways, I think we should, but I think we should put the topic up maybe a couple days in advance,
Yeah.
and then we can be a little bit more well read up on. Say,
Yeah, we did do that last week. This week
I thought we were doing
we
cultural appropriation this week. I thought that's what we were gonna do.
no,
Yeah,
that's later this week.
About.
maybe we can do that as like a Halloween special. Break the rule once a week and maybe do it.
Just right as the first round.
We're trying to have the actual with Mary Catherine and Al.
Oh, that'd be cool if they got on here.
Well,
Are
we're
there?
going
I also
to
think
try to book the room, George. You know all this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember. There'd be a lot of triggering going on. That'd be fun.
George.
I mean, when you say that they would be willing to get on, do you mean like a Hangouts or a physical?
Like, book a room and I moderate and have an actual discussion.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm not
I am
sure.
going to book a room. I just need everybody's availability because I don't want to be booking at a day or time where, say, 3 out of 4 people are available.
That's why I'm waiting to hear from Al.
Okay. Well, great. Generally, what happened was we talked about climate change, and then we moved into free speech and climate change, and I think that worked out well. Like I said, this is the first time that we're doing this officially, and as such, we're all fairly new to this, myself included. One thing that I wanted to say is that I'm really happy with how everybody was respectful to one another. I didn't have to intervene almost at all. Sometimes I would ask specific people to say something because I could tell that they wanted to say something. But apart from that, it was great. It was flawless.
One thing is I try to get people who maybe aren't members of the club. We got someone maybe studying environmental science.
Oh, yes.
Discussion with this.
That's
I
a
met
very
somebody
good idea.
one night who said he was studying environmental studies at the university. I only have his name. I never seen him after that. I met him at a concert. We talked about topic of like free speech for a little bit, and if I ever saw him on campus again, I would definitely invite him to join.
Definitely.
But yeah.
Everybody's free to join here. All we have to do is
Speaking
send you a link
of-
and you come in.
Anyone watching and anyone in the group, please invite all your friends to like the Facebook page.
Oh, right.
By the
right.
way,
we have a topic?
Sorry, Khaled, go.
Yeah, the SSFS York page just shared our live stream, so.
Yeah, I saw.
Oh, that's
Who
great.
did?
Really?
Who did?
York.
SSFS York.
Oh,
That's really good.
wow. That's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah,
And there's still only 3 people watching.
Well, at least there's some outside recognition there. So we're on the right track. And for our first official broadcast, I think the fact that we have any outside viewers, that's great.
And like I
Yeah,
said, it'll increase with time. I'm really not concerned about the viewership now. It's something I think it's something that'll increase with time and with practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
I think as soon as we start getting people who disagree with us on and have them sharing it, you're like,
And I do
hey
think
guys,
that-
watch me smack down climate change tonight or something.
And I do think that another thing that's going on is that generally speaking, we did kind of share this out of a sudden and out of nowhere. So I feel like if, say, we plan this as a regular thing, then people would actually make time for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Maggie, I just wanted to ask. I thought you were gonna do this like weekly, but you could correct me if I'm wrong. You know how you posted that thing on our the UWindsor, the free speech one for our page about the feminism thing?
Yeah.
Are you posting a topic like a controversial topic sort of on there like regularly, or was that just like?
It's
That's just something
supposed to be
you saw.
regular, like every weekend.
Okay.
It's there. No one commented.
You posted one this weekend. What was it?
Climate change.
Yeah,
but
that's
you
why we're
posted
talking
it
about climate
today.
change.
I posted it today.
Sorry.
I said
Wow.
weekend. I was working all day yesterday.
Yeah, no. It's of course things happen. Don't worry about it. It's
Yeah, but I posted it this weekend. It's there.
The
You know
one-
what?
Okay.
I'm actually going to share this on the UWindsor Conservative page as well. That might bring a
Oh, please do. I mean, you
ahead.
sort of represent them, so
yeah.
they'll definitely want to hear, I'm sure. And anybody, we don't really have a great representation on the left. Of course, we would really like to invite anybody, but it's hard to get people on the left to come and speak, unfortunately.
Millionaires and billionaires.
Right, exactly.
We got to get Bernie on here. That's what we got to do.
We'll just turn off your camera and put a picture of Bernie.
There you go. We got our leftist.
I actually think I can get Milo on right now, actually, if you want him to. Oh, there he is.
Oh,
Feminism is cancer.
all right then. I think that covers everything, unless there's anything anybody wants to add.
No. But cheers to this group and what we're doing.
Cheers.
Yes.
See you all next Sunday.
Yeah,
And Thursday, because I'll see everyone in this group on Thursday.
definitely. Yep.
Do we have a meeting this week?
Yeah, I'll show up. Please bring Mary, by the way.
Yeah, I actually
Yes, it was great. It was great that she was actually refuting us.
Because there was some really good discussion going on when she was there, like a genuine alternate viewpoint completely. So I think I say bring her as much as possible.
She normally works Thursday nights.
Yeah, that's what she did
Unfortunate.
say last week in the meeting.
Great.
But yeah,
Oh, well then.
she enjoyed herself. She stuck with us till the end of pub night.
Oh, I missed out. I wish I was there.
Yeah, you did.
I know. Next time.
Yeah, and next time let's go to some place that's not so loud in terms of music.
Well, to be
Oh,
we didn't know that some random singer would be playing there.
singer. I think you mean a personal speaker.
Bobby
Right
Sprout.
in your ear.
Dreamer.
For any of you watching Game of Thrones, a Dothraki screamer.
I mean,
This guy was so loud.
since we're all here,
Oh,
I wanted to forward the idea of the Dom Polski, the Polish house in Windsor. They have a really nice basement with really cheap beer. That's really good, and they don't play loud music.
Yeah, hand me a cheap beer.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised. I was paying I don't know, it was $3.50 or $4 for a pint of Pilsner. So
Really?
it was great.
That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, bring it up next Thursday.
We'll do. All right. Well, happy to have talked with all of you. Happy to have managed this somewhat. See you next Sunday. Hopefully.
Sunday.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
everybody.
you guys have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.